Alright, for this last video I want to show you how to do resampling in Ableton Live and just why that's such a powerful technique. It's a pretty simple one, but it's surprising how often this is overlooked. When you have a bunch of complex tracks going on with all of these effect settings and drum racks and everything, sometimes it's easier just to think about the track so far as one audio clip rather than having all of this stuff going on. It's also a lot easier on your processor if you're just listening to it as an audio clip, rather than processing all of these devices. Additionally, taking what you've done so far and sampling it to a clip and then reslicing that again can lead to a lot of creative inspiration down the line. What I've set up here is two tracks playing at the same time. I have the string track that we chopped up, and as you can see I've set up an auto filter which is high pass filtering a lot of the low and mid frequencies out, so we're left with these high frequencies. Here's the original track, and here's what I have now. In addition to the string track, I'll also be playing the break track, and I've looped up 4 bars of that to play as well. The major change I made to this loop was to take out one of the triggers so that the string part could be heard very clearly at this section right here. So if I play them both back at the same time, I'll just drag them up to their own scene here, and then hit play. This little arrangement could work really well as a transitional part of the track, but I'd like to work with it a little bit more and actually chop it up as an audio clip. The way to do that is just to set up a new audio track. I'll go ahead and rename it to Resample. And then I'm going to bring audio from Resampling. What that means is that this resampling track is simply recording everything that happens at the master output here. So in essence, it's recording all of the currently playing tracks. So I'll turn on record arm here. The next thing I'm going to do is set these two clips playing back and then immediately stop them just by hitting the spacebar. The reason I did that is because now these two clips are in playback mode. That way, when I hit the record button on the resample track, both of these clips will automatically start over and start playing the loop as I want it recorded. And as you can see, when I hit the play button right here, it stopped recording and automatically started playing the loop as it was recorded over again. So I'll hit this stop all clips button down here, and that just stops everything from playing back. And I'll play back our resampled clip. Sounds good. And now we have everything that came out of the master output as a new resampled clip here on this audio track. Now I only want a few parts of this clip to be chopped up into their own slices. So rather than slicing it at even divisions such as quarter notes and eighth notes, I'd rather only have it sliced at certain parts. And the way you achieve that is simply to enable the warp markers where you'd like the slices to occur. So for instance, I'd like a warp marker here because I want a slice representing the first part of the loop. I also want this hit as a slice, so I'm going to double click on its warp marker. I think I'll take this slice, and then I'll make another slice right about here. And lastly, I'll get this slice as well. Also, I'm going to double click on the last slice in the loop so that all of these slices are now going to be recognized by the slice engine. So now everything between 1 and 5, that is the entire loop, will be sliced according to how you've enabled these warp markers. Let me show you what I mean. Simply right-click on your resampled clip, go to Slice to New MIDI Track, and now here in the Create One Slice Per section that we saw before, instead of selecting one of these note boundaries, simply select Warp Marker. We'll use the built-in zero velocity preset again, and hit OK. And there we go, we have those 5 slices that we set up. Now I'll go through and do what we did before. I'll set up choke groups so that I can trigger these and not have them overlap. I'll put them all in the same choke group and turn the release all the way up again. And as you can see, the slices are now chopped up exactly as I wanted them to be by defining them with custom warp markers. Now I told you before that I wanted to show you how to create your own slicing presets, so why don't we go through that now. First I'll delete this new track that we created with the drum rack. Now to show you how to create these presets, it's best just to study the presets that Ableton provided in the first place. In order to find the presets for slicing, simply go to your Ableton Live library. I already have the library set as one of my folder defaults over here. So now we're in the library folder. You'll want to go to Defaults, then go down to Slicing, and then you have the list here that you see in the slicing dialog. Let's drag in the built-in zero velocity preset and take a look at how they set it up. As you can see, they have one simpler device already loaded up onto the first pad. If we take a look at that, you can see that this simpler device is defining all of the mappings for the macro knobs. So that tells us that all we have to do to set up our own preset is to drag the device that we'd like to load up by default onto one of the pads, and then do our macro mappings over here. So I'll delete this and we'll do it on our own. I'll come back up to my devices chooser, drag a drum rack into the interface. Now we want this still loading up a simpler by default, so I'll drag a simpler into the pad view, turn on the macro knob view, and now we can go through and make customizations. Now the nice thing here is that you can also drop audio effects into this preset as well, and Ableton Live's slicing preset will be able to handle this for you. So say I want an EQ3 always loaded up right after each of my simplers. I'll just drag one in, and there we go. Now let's make some custom macro knob arrangements. I'll come over here and start mapping the knobs to the parameters that I'd like them mapped to by default. For instance, let's have attack and decay map to macro 1 for attack, and then I'll map macro 2 to decay. Come back over here and rename those. Attack and decay. Additionally, I'd like some knobs to tweak the EQ3 bands. And I think I'll use the first 3 knobs down here at the bottom to do that. So I'll just come over here and right click. Map the first one to macro 5, the second one to macro 6, and the third one to macro 7. Come back over here and then appropriately rename the macro knobs. Let's call this low, mid, and high. We've got a few knobs left, so why not map those as well? Let's make macro 3 a special knob that modifies 2 parameters at the same time. For instance, it will both turn on the filter as well as modify the filter frequency. I'll rename this to filter frequency. Now let's find a couple things for macros 4 and 8 to do. I think macro 4 should turn on loop mode. So I'll call this loop on, and then macro 8 can change the start position of the loop. So I'll rename to loop start. Now in order to save this as a preset, I just hit the save button right here, and it automatically wants to save into my drum rack presets, which of course is incorrect, but that's fine for now. Just name your preset, so I'll call this custom simpler, hit enter and it saves. Now you can right click on this and go to show in Finder if you're on a Mac. You'll probably have a different command if you're on a PC, such as open directory. So I'll open that up. Now you'll just want to copy that. Now go back to your main live library file and find that defaults folder. Go to slicing and then paste that right into your slicing folder. I'll close that. I'll delete this track for now. Now let's go ahead and rechop our resampled clip here. Slice the new MIDI track. I'll slice it to quarter notes, say, and then here we go. We have custom simpler ready to go for us. I'll hit OK. It gives us all of our quarter notes set up, and every track, as you can see, every slice has its own EQ3, and all of the knobs are already mapped to the macro knobs that we set up in our preset. So as you can see, creating your own drum rack presets is very logical and straightforward. You just create a new drum rack, and then set up your first pad to be the template for how you want all of your pads to be set up when you do a slice. drag all your devices on, map your macro knobs and rename them, save the preset, and then just copy that preset over to your defaults slicing folder. I recommend that you go through and while you're experimenting with developing your own workflow in Ableton Live, to create a bunch of your own custom drum rack presets based on the most common operations that you like to do with the macro knobs, as well as changing the devices to whatever you want.